You know that feeling when you are staring down at a notebook and
Yeah.
like it is a beautiful color-coded masterpiece.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Right. You have three different colors of ink, neat little columns, carefully placed highlighters. You spent hours studying these new vocabulary words or maybe, concepts for a big presentation.
And you walk away feeling incredibly productive. Right.
Exactly. But then you look at that exact same page a week later and it feels like a stranger wrote it. I mean, you remember absolutely none of it. All that effort just seems completely wasted.
It is a universally painful experience.
Hmm.
And it usually leads straight to a very specific, quiet feeling of being personally broken. You tell yourself, well, I just have a bad memory.
Yeah, you start believing you just aren't one of those memory people.
Yeah.
But today's deep dive into our source material, it's called the 24-hour memory window. It challenges that entire narrative.
It really does. It flips it on its head.
Yeah, there's this fascinating experiment detailed in our sources that perfectly captures what's actually going on. So, two people were having a normal conversation, and one of them secretly, deliberately, dropped five highly unusual English words into the chat.
Right. And they played it completely naturally.
Yeah, completely naturally.
And the results were, I mean, they were stunning, yet entirely predictable from a biological standpoint. 24 hours later, the person who had been secretly tested had completely forgotten four of those five words.
4 out of 5, just gone.
Gone, vaporized. And, this was a native speaker listening to their own language.
Which is wild because if a native speaker naturally loses 80% of what they hear in a single day, our chances of easily retaining completely new information like a foreign language or complex technical terms, they seem impossibly low.
They seem that way, yeah.
Yeah.
But the sources show it's entirely manageable once you understand the actual machinery at work.
Exactly. And the mission of this deep dive is to completely dismantle the myth that you have a bad memory. We are going to reveal the actual biological schedule your brain uses to delete information.
Because it is a highly predictable schedule.
Right. And more importantly, we're going to show you how just 6 minutes of timed work can hack that schedule. Okay, let's unpack this. Why does the brain throw away the things we worked so hard to learn?
Well, to understand why, we actually have to travel back about 140 years. There was this German scientist named Hermann Ebbinghaus who dedicated himself to what sounds like a wonderfully boring task.
Wondrously boring is a great way to put it.
Right. He memorized massive lists of completely nonsense syllables, just random disconnected sounds. Then he tested himself repeatedly over a series of days and mapped the results on a graph.
And what he found was kind of groundbreaking. Right?
Totally. What he created is now famous in psychology. It's called the forgetting curve.
And the math on this curve is just brutal. I mean, the source lays it out clearly. Within roughly 1 single hour, about half of the new material you just learned is gone.
Yeah, half. Just wiped out.
Half. And by the time you wake up tomorrow morning, around 70% of it has completely vanished.
So if you learn 20 new words today, tomorrow morning you effectively own 6 of them. On a good day.
Wow, 6 out of 20.
Yeah. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to realize that this 70% deletion rate is actually a highly evolved, healthy brain feature.
It's not a malfunction.
Not at all. It is not a malfunction. Think about the sheer volume of data your brain is exposed to in a single day.
Oh, I see.
The faces of strangers on the bus, the prices of cereal in the supermarket, the hundreds of notifications that pop up on your phone, half of a video you watched while making lunch.
That is, honestly, it's a terrifying amount of data to process.
Right. And if your brain kept all that information at full strength, you would literally drown in sensory and cognitive input. It would be completely paralyzing.
So it has to get rid of it.
Exactly. Your brain runs a ruthless nightly cleanup operation to prevent this. And the rule it follows for this cleanup is simple, highly efficient, and totally unforgiving. If we didn't use it, we probably don't need it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, every night there's essentially a quality control mechanism in your head. A new word or concept you met for 4 seconds that afternoon is standing there trying to justify keeping its neural connections active.
But because you only saw it once, it has no argument.
Exactly. It gets deleted.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, though,
Mhm.
because if the brain deletes what isn't strictly important or used recently, why do I vividly, and I mean vividly, remember the embarrassing lyrics to a pop song from when I was 12 years old?
Oh, we all have those.
Right, I haven't used that information in decades. And it is definitely not important for my survival. So why did that survive the nightly cleanup?
Well, it's because the brain doesn't actually keep what is objectively important. The brain keeps what returns.
What returns?
Yeah. When you were 12, you didn't just hear that song once. You heard it on the radio, you sang it with your friends. It looped in your head while you were trying to sleep.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true.
It returned again and again. Repetition is how a memory proves it deserves structural permanence. The brain essentially equates frequency of access with biological necessity.
So the brain keeps what returns. Our sources point out that this process is, it's even harder when you're learning something like a second language, right?
Yeah, definitely. Much harder.
Because new foreign words seem to fade way faster than words in your native language ever did.
Yeah, and it comes down to something we can visualize as a giant net.
A giant net. Okay.
Right? In your native language, every single word you know exists inside this massive web of interconnected memories, sounds, contexts, and emotions.
So it's all tied together.
Exactly.
Hmm.
When you learn a new word in your native language, it lands in that giant net. It instantly touches a dozen other connected concepts and gets caught. It has, existing infrastructure to hold it in place.
So if a native word gets caught in the net, a new foreign word, or, I don't know, a highly technical concept you've never encountered before, is basically falling into a void.
Yes. It doesn't have those pre-existing hooks to grab onto.
So it just falls right through.
It falls right through the gaps.
Yeah.
Because of that lack of infrastructure, second language learners require significantly more returns, like more active repetitions, than they did when learning their first language.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. If a native word needed 2 returns to stick, a foreign word might need 3 or 4. It's not a personal weakness, it's just cognitive physics.
So if we know the brain is determined to delete these new words because they're falling through the empty space of this net, we have to figure out how to force the brain to keep them.
Right.
And the source material frames this perfectly. It says, a new word you just learned is not a memory yet. It is simply a draft.
A draft, yes. It is an unsaved document sitting in short-term storage. When you meet a new word, your brain quickly types up a very fragile draft of it, but it hasn't hit save.
Right. And rereading a word in your notebook is the equivalent of just staring at the unsaved document on your computer screen. Staring at it doesn't save it.
Not at all.
Retrieving the word, like actually forcing yourself to pull it out of your own head without looking at the answer, that is the keyboard shortcut to hit save. You have to hit Control-S.
Yes, and that hitting of the save button requires actual effort. We are conditioned to think that if we struggle to remember something, we are failing.
Which feels terrible.
It does. But when you reach for a word and it hurts a little, when it's right there on the tip of your tongue and you have to really work to pull it forward, that struggle is the physical mechanism of saving.
Wow.
Easy review saves nothing. Difficult retrieval saves everything.
Wait, I need to pause on this because the sources are very specific about the timeline here. Why specifically a 24-hour window? What is physically happening in the brain that makes the draft expire on that exact timeline?
Well, short-term memory is fundamentally a temporary chemical event.
Yeah.
When you encounter a new word, neurotransmitters spike in a specific synapse. They are hovering there, creating a very weak temporary bridge.
Yeah.
If you don't reinforce that bridge, those chemicals naturally dissipate and wash away as part of your brain's daily metabolic cycle.
And that takes a day.
Roughly a day, yeah. If you struggle to retrieve the word before they wash away, you trigger a stronger chemical signal. You validate the bridge.
But if you miss that 24-hour window, the chemical trace simply evaporates. By day 3, if you try to look at it again, you are no longer reviewing the word.
Exactly. You are relearning it from zero.
You are paying full retail price for a memory you could have had at a massive discount.
That discount is exactly what efficient learning is all about. You want to execute that retrieval within the window to secure the memory cheaply, taking maybe 2 minutes of effort rather than starting over completely.
So we know how to hit save, by retrieving the information and struggling a bit before the chemical bridge washes away. But we need to look at exactly when the brain actually processes that save command and builds something more permanent.
Right.
Because the heavy lifting doesn't happen while we're awake.
It really doesn't. It happens during the night shift.
The night shift.
Yeah. While you sleep, your brain is doing something extraordinary with the data you gather that day. Deep inside your brain is a small structure called the hippocampus.
Okay.
You can think of the hippocampus as the reception desk of your memory. It's a short-term parking lot. Everything new you learn checks in there first. But the reception desk is tiny, and it is temporary.
Now, your long-term memory lives in the cortex, which is From the source, it's like this massive, sprawling hotel.
Exactly. And during deep, non-REM sleep, your brain physically moves the important guests, the memories you save on from the tiny reception desk up into their permanent rooms in the hotel.
And scientists call this consolidation, right?
Consolidation, yes. The hippocampus basically acts like a projector. It rapidly replays the day's important events over and over to the cortex, and the cortex slowly wires up permanent connections based on that replay.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you understand that biology, the reception desk, the projector, and the hotel, it completely destroys the concept of cramming. It proves that cramming is mathematically broken.
It is the most self-defeating study method in existence.
If you are sitting there at 2 a.m., chugging your fourth coffee, trying to memorize 40 new vocabulary words for a test the next day, you are simultaneously doing two terrible things. First, you are stuffing 40 brand new guests into a reception desk that is already completely full from your normal day. Second, by staying up until 2 a.m., you are actively denying the brain the specific deep sleep cycles it needs to turn on the projector and move those guests upstairs.
You are actively sabotaging the machinery.
Yeah.
You are using the brain's designated saving time to create more unsaved files. The crammer wakes up the next morning with a full notebook, an exhausted body, an entirely empty head, and the reinforced belief that they have a terrible memory.
When in reality, they have a perfectly healthy memory system that was deliberately starved of the biological time it needed to do its job.
Exactly.
So the goal isn't to meet words right before bed. You want to deliver your words to the night shift, clean and ready to go. Meet your new words whenever life gives them to you, on a podcast at lunch, reading an article at breakfast.
Just let the brain's free, built-in overnight factory do the actual heavy lifting of consolidation.
Meet anytime, return in the evening, let the night do the work, confirm in the morning.
That's the rhythm.
So we've talked about the forgetting curve, the 24-hour window, the temporary chemical bridges, and night shift consolidation. We can synthesize all of this into the specific 6-minute actionable method from our sources. It's called the 3-touch rule.
Yes, the 3-touch rule. It consists of 3 tiny appointments with any new piece of information.
Okay, walk us through it.
Touch 1 happens the same evening you learn the word. Before bed, you look at your list of maybe 5 words. You cover the definition and you struggle to retrieve it. You let it hurt a little.
Right.
Then you flip it, cover the word, and retrieve it again. That's maybe 2 minutes of work. You have now signaled to the brain, this draft matters. Do not let the chemicals wash away.
Then the night shift takes over while you sleep. The projector runs. They move it to the hotel, which sets up touch 2.
Touch 2 is the next morning. You take the same 5 words and you do the same 2-minute self-test.
Just a quick check-in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The purpose here is to catch the words right after that overnight consolidation process and confirm to the brain that this new connection is actively needed in your waking environment.
Then we arrive at touch 3, which happens on day 3.
Day 3, yeah.
Why day 3 specifically? Why not just do it the very next day again?
Well, this touches on the neuroscience of structural plasticity.
Oh, okay.
While the initial chemical signal is fast, actually building a permanent memory requires protein synthesis. Your brain is physically constructing new synaptic receptors in the cortex.
So it's an actual physical build?
It is. And that construction project takes roughly 48 to 72 hours to stabilize. By hitting the memory again on day 3, you are returning right when the initial structure starts to settle.
Wow.
You are telling the brain to keep funding that construction project. By this point, the retrieval shouldn't hurt anymore. It should feel almost easy.
And that feeling of ease means the word has successfully moved from a fragile draft to permanent storage. The word is now sticky. It is locked in. Evening, morning, day 3. 6 minutes total per word group.
6 minutes, that's it.
And the source actually provides a brilliant personal upgrade to make those touches even more powerful. When you are doing your retrieval, you have to make it about you.
Oh, yes. This leverages a psychological phenomenon. Your brain prioritizes self-related material. It files it in a VIP drawer.
The VIP drawer? I like that.
Yeah, so if you learn the word unpredictable and your retrieval sentence is, the weather is unpredictable, your brain assigns it very low emotional weight.
Right.
But if your retrieval sentence is, my boss is unpredictable, suddenly the word is tied to your actual life, your stress levels, and a specific meeting you have on Monday.
A word wearing your own life is infinitely harder for your brain to delete. But because, human beings are involved, there are ways we accidentally break this elegant system. The sources highlight three massive traps that learners fall into.
And we really need to navigate these carefully. Trap number one is the recognition trap.
The recognition trap.
This goes back to your color-coded notebook. When you simply reread your list of words, every word looks familiar. Your brain recognizes the shape of the letters and assumes you know the material.
But familiarity is absolutely not retrieval.
Not at all. Recognizing a word when it's presented to you uses the visual cortex. It's a completely different neural pathway than retrieving a word out of thin air, which requires active searching by the prefrontal cortex.
So rereading feels satisfying because it feels like learning?
Yes, but biologically, it is giving you the illusion of competence without forcing the prefrontal cortex to do any of the actual lifting required for long-term storage.
So the physical act of covering the page with your hand and forcing the prefrontal cortex to search for the answer is the only way out of that trap.
The only way.
Well, trap number 2 hits a little close to home for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the streak trap. I am fully ready to confess to you and the listener that I once used one of those famous language learning apps for 300 days straight.
300 days? That's a lot.
My streak was massive. The app threw digital fireworks at me every night.
Well, let me guess the actual real-world result of those 300 days.
It's bad. After almost a year of daily practice, the only thing I could say with absolute rock-solid confidence in a real conversation was, the turtle drinks milk.
The turtle drinks milk. Classic.
I could not order a coffee to save my life, but I was fully prepared to discuss dairy-consuming reptiles.
That is hilarious.
The problem was, the app was heavily rewarding me for meeting new drafts. I was getting points for encountering 20 fresh words a day, but I was never, ever hitting the save button through space retrieval.
Right.
The fireworks were just celebrating the sheer size of my pile of unsaved documents.
Gamification often measures your loyalty to the app's engagement metrics rather than your actual retention of the material. A small number of words, just 5 words processed through the 3-touch rule, will always outperform 20 words processed for a digital high five.
That is so true, and that leads directly into the final trap. Trap number 3, the identity trap. And this is the quietest and most toxic one. It's that core belief that you simply have a bad memory.
It's so important to understand the psychological weight of this trap. For decades, traditional schooling has trained us to view memory as a fixed genetic trait.
Right.
You take a test, you forget the material the next day, and the system subtly tells you that you just aren't smart enough. We internalize that as shame.
When you wake up and realize you've forgotten 70% of what you learned yesterday, you aren't experiencing a personal failing. You are experiencing textbook human biology.
Yes.
You are judging a perfectly normal brain running its perfectly normal delete schedule simply because no one in your entire educational career ever told you this schedule existed. The greatest polyglots in the world forget the exact same 70% on day 1.
They just know they have to intervene within the next 24 hours.
Exactly. And to prove how effortless this intervention can be, the creators of the source material did something incredibly clever.
Oh, the word test.
Yeah. Remember at the very beginning of the deep dive, I mentioned they gave their listeners 5 random words. Those words were cram, fade, sticky, retrieve, and lock-in.
And they explicitly told the listeners not to write them down, just to listen.
Right. At the end of their show, they asked the listeners to recall those 5 words. Based on Ebbinghaus and the forgetting curve, those words should have completely vanished from short-term memory, but almost all the listeners remembered them perfectly.
They remembered because the hosts bypassed the forgetting curve entirely.
Yep.
They naturally slipped all 5 of those words back into their dialogue throughout the show. They forced the listeners' brains to experience spaced returns without them even consciously realizing their prefrontal cortex was doing the work of retrieval.
They executed the 3-touch rule on the audience while explaining the 3-touch rule to the audience. It's brilliant.
It really is. And this raises an important question. If cognitive science proves that space retrieval works this effectively, and if this method literally only takes 6 minutes a day, why do we culturally default to grueling, miserable hours of inefficient studying?
I think we have been conditioned to believe that suffering equals learning. There's a deeply ingrained disconnect in our minds between effort and results. We assume that if we aren't sweating over a desk for 3 continuous hours, we aren't making progress.
But cognitive science tells us the exact opposite. Long, continuous sessions just clog the reception desk and trigger fatigue. Short, sharp moments of effort, spaced out over days, follow the biological blueprint to build the permanent hotel.
It all distills down to the core philosophy of our sources today, which is little and often. I want to read this quote directly from the material because it summarizes the entire biological reality we've been discussing. You don't need more study hours. You need more nights between your study minutes.
It fundamentally changes the relationship you have with your own mind. It removes the guilt and replaces it with strategy.
So what does this all mean? It means the next time you forget a name, a new concept from a meeting, or a foreign word, you need to stop feeling broken. You are not stupid. Your memory is not failing you.
Not at all.
It is just a healthy, highly efficient brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting you from sensory overload by taking out the trash. If you want to keep something, you just have to give your brain the right chemical signal on the right schedule.
You have to engage the struggle and hit save.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over today. Something that wasn't explicitly spelled out in the source material, but it feels like the inevitable conclusion of all this science.
I'm intrigued to see where this biological framework leads.
Well, if our brain runs this ruthless nightly cleanup, deleting absolutely any information that we didn't actively retrieve, struggle with, and signal to save that day, I mean, what does that mean for the sheer volume of passive information we consume every single day?
Oh, wow.
Think about the hundreds of tweets you scroll past, the endless short-form videos, the barrage of news headlines. We consume them visually, but we never force our prefrontal cortex to retrieve them. We never struggle to recall them. We never hit save.
We are feeding ourselves an endless daily diet of unsaved drafts.
Exactly. Are we unintentionally training our brains to become hyper-efficient at deleting our own lives? By constantly exposing ourselves to a flood of passive information without ever taking the 6 minutes to reflect, retrieve, and lock in what actually matters. I mean, we might just be turning our entire minds into that beautiful, color-coded notebook.
Go on from the start.
Yeah, full of incredible things that we spend our time on, but when we look back a week later, we remember absolutely none of it.
A lifetime of moments we never bothered to save. That is a sobering application of the forgetting curve.
Something to think about the next time you catch yourself doom scrolling. Hit save on the good stuff, people. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.